Well, experts and economists are still digesting this week's medium-term budget speech as delivered by the Finance Minister, Duma Gqubule. Crucial issues raised in the lead-up to the speech included government taking over a portion of struggling power utility Eskom's debt and giving a solution to the ongoing e-tolls crisis, or standoff, we should say, in Gauteng. Economist Duma Gqubule is with us now to talk about the latest developments. Duma, 2 days on, was the speech able to meet all your expectations?
No, it didn't meet any of my expectations. We have to understand the objectives of economic policy. This is your fiscal policy, your government spending, and your monetary policy, the interest rates, and so on. The objectives are to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We live in a country with unprecedented levels of unemployment, 12.3 million people unemployed. We also have an unemployment rate for people of all races of 44.1%. For Africans, it's 48%, and for African females, it's 51%. Now, there's a relationship between GDP growth and employment creation. The budget forecasts show that the economy will grow between 2023 and 2025 by about 1.6% a year. Now, that is the consequence of this budget will be rising unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And I just have to say that what I don't understand from the government point of view, the three most important issues in terms of growing this economy is to end these power blackouts. There is no plan, in my view, to end the power blackouts, number one. The economy can't grow until we end the power blackouts in the short term. The second thing, this is an austerity budget which will take money away from the economy and it will reduce GDP growth. Number three, the central bank has increased interest rates by 275 basis points over the past year. Now, with power blackouts, austerity budget, and rising interest rates, how can we grow this economy? The government has no interest in growing this economy.
So just on that then, you mentioned the issue of the ongoing power cuts courtesy of Eskom. The utility has said things should begin to stabilize, shall we say, in the next 18 months or so. The president in July announced that plan that will see more and easier introduction of other alternative energy sources into the mix. Just recently, Eskom signed those agreements with power producers who are basically going to be using Eskom-owned land to produce solar power, right? Now the finance minister says government is going to take on part of Eskom's 400 billion rand debt. That is the latest on that score. What more do you think needs to happen right now to improve the situation?
Okay, so the government must take over some of the debt. I argue they must take over 75% of the debt so that Eskom has a financial runway to invest again in the economy. It has stopped virtually investing in the economy and spend on maintenance and so forth. That's number one. Number two, in the short term, to end these power blackouts, we have to increase the energy availability factor to 75%. Currently, it's sitting at about 55%. That is unacceptable. About half the power is unavailable most of the time this year. So we have to improve that in the short term. New capacity. I was reading the speech that the president made in Parliament 2 years ago when he announced the recovery plan. He said 11,800 megawatts will come onto the grid within 2 years. Nothing has come onto the grid. The budget said 14 gigawatts will come onto the grid in 2 years. There's nobody in South Africa who believes that will happen. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, we must invest in new capacity. It should be something that is beyond debate. But I don't understand why the government is 100% of this new capacity must come from the private sector. And that process is happening too slow to end. New capacity will not come on for the next 2 years, the ones that are signed by Eskom. We need a solution now. We can't afford another week, another month, or another year of load shedding.
Well, Eskom yesterday did have a briefing where they basically spoke of a 10-year look, if you will, a forecast about what they're going to do. And part of that statement says that during the Transmission Development Plan public forum this week, Eskom revealed that approximately 53 gigawatts of new additional generation capacity, particularly from renewable energy sources, including wind and solar, will be required for the period up to 2032 in order to ensure better security in the country. The management has been widely criticized, but when you look at things such as that plan unveiled yesterday, do you get a sense then that they are fully up to speed with what the problem is and that the work to address it is then moving at adequate speed?
Well, the problem we have is that 100% of that new capacity must be built by the private sector, according to the government. So the private sector is blackmailing the government. You know, like the bid window 5 has collapsed because the economic situation. So it's a stop-start process, and the two bid windows that have been open have virtually collapsed because the private sector is, you know, the tantrums of the private sector, they're not meeting the conditions that they want to make this risk-free. So I'm saying that the state itself, the government must invest in new capacity. They can't rely on the private sector only to invest in 100% of this new capacity. So there should be a line item in every budget in a normal country that we will spend like we will expand capacity by 5, 6, 7 gigawatts every year, and it shouldn't be something that we actually debate about. And there should be a line item in the budget every year that this is what we'll spend to invest in new capacity. This is the part I don't understand. So in the short term, we must improve the performance of the existing fleet. In the medium term, we must make those investments in new capacity to power our economy to grow faster. And I believe that we need to set a growth target of about 6% to address this unemployment. So we will need more power than what Eskom had in its forecast. Eskom forecasts are based on a 5% increase in demand. I think we need to have a higher increase. We need to budget for a higher increase in demand because we need to grow this economy much faster than. Yeah.
Very quickly then, Duma, I know you've been speaking a lot about, in the last 2 years especially, the introduction or the need for the introduction of a basic income grant. That's been kicked down further to around 2024. In the meantime, the SRD, Special Relief of Distress Grant, introduced during the pandemic, that lapses in early 2023. What then needs to happen in that interim period?
Well, the way I understood it, they're going to continue it until the end of March 2024, and they will make a decision on this permanent income support to the permanent, like the basic income grant. So there were 2 presentations that were released recently by the Treasury and by the President. But what the impression I get from it is that Treasury has not really started applying its minds to it. You know, some of us in civil society, we've been applying our minds to this for 2 or 3 years, and they're just catching up to speed as to what this means. And what they're saying is that they introduced this grant, you have to cut expenditure elsewhere. That will make it unaffordable. What the economy needs is a stimulus to get the economy growing at much faster than 1.5%. And part of the stimulus requires us to invest in our people through social spending, invest in infrastructure. The budget doesn't make any additional allocations to infrastructure. The infrastructure fund that was set up by the President, 400 billion rand fund in 2018, today has got no money. The budget cut an allocation of 4.2 billion rands. Right. It was earmarked for infrastructure. That is scandalous, yeah.
Duma Gqubule, Economist, good to have your time as always. Thank you.